All right. Good day, good afternoon, good morning, where the two appetizers for one deal is still in effect. Welcome to Bolded Slugs. I am Zeus Ryan. Today, we've got Lisa Lutes on the program. Lisa, tell the people how you are.
I am good. The sun is shining. It's a beautiful day. I'm good.
Oh, you're hitting us with the optimism already. And I would only counter that by saying it is Monday. So you're up against it. If this was a
Yes.
Friday, I would be like, yeah, party, let's rock. But it's Monday and it's a bit of a struggle. So let's see if we can come out on the other side uh positively progressed by the time we're done. What are we doing in the world right now in terms of like the industry, in terms of writing, in terms of the community? Where do you feel like we're at right now? I ask people ostensibly like since the strikes, like what are your hopes? Like, what do you think is going to happen? And I see things kind of just continually falling apart. And now I'm just kind of like throwing my hands up in the air, asking, what are we doing? So, Lisa, I ask you, what are we doing?
I feel like things are pretty chaotic right now. And I have strong opinions about certain gaps in the market that should be filled but are not.
What are
And
those gaps? This is a perfect show for us to just force our way into those gaps and bring them to light. What are we missing that we should otherwise be paying attention to?
well, I'm the mother of an 11-year-old and 14-year-old daughter, and there is nothing for them out there right now. There's a huge gap in the tween market and the younger teens. They do not come out with movies, especially live action or scripted content anymore. So they're diving into the internet and coming up with some weird stuff.
Again, for those of you with the benefit of flash photography, I'm sitting here kind of dumbfounded, like, no, that can't possibly be true. But I'm like, yeah, like the CW is gone. Assuming you would even believe that that was like the last bastion for some of this type of stuff. But
Well, it was most of it.
right, sure, I will absolutely, but then as I'm thinking, I'm like, isn't Nickelodeon still doing stuff? No, no. Isn't the Disney Channel still doing stuff? No. Like,
Everything's
yeah,
canceled, everything's old. There's huge gaps. And I got to tell you this because it just happened last night. My kids started talking about some new show because they're always finding old stuff. And my daughter starts going on about this one character that is a porn star named Angel Dust or something.
all
And I'm
I'm
like,
I'm I'm scared. Go ahead.
so they're going on and on about this new cartoon called Has Been Hotel. And I Googled it, and it is not for children. It is not for 11-year-olds. But because they've run out of things to watch, they went looking on the internet, and that's what they came up with.
Is this is not to give pub to a show unnecessarily, but I have never heard of this program. My child is 17 and a boy. I stopped asking what he's into a long time ago. I just out of fear for my own personal safety, I don't ask any questions. But I can see how, the 11, 12, 13, market, because historically, I don't think I'm out of turn saying that is or has been a massive moneymaker. I mean,
Yeah,
back in my day, oh God, my back hurts even saying that. But even in the era of Harry Potter, yes, that
yeah.
ostensibly came from books, but look what it became into the Twilight stuff. I don't think anybody's sitting here saying right, wrong, or indifferent. Those aren't billion-dollar franchises. So for there to be that kind of gap in the market now, yeah, no, that's super surprising to me. Absolutely surprising to me.
Well, it's not just the merchandise too. It's like that age group has a huge amount of disposable time because they're too old to play and they're too young to work.
Remember
And
those days? Remember when we had, oh, yeah, I would love to be a kid that has disposable time. The amount of things I would consume for sure. Yeah.
and they're bored and they have nothing to do, they have nothing to watch. So they go on TikTok and they go on YouTube and they fall down these rabbit holes that you can't control.
Right.
I'm very lucky because my daughter took up knitting somehow. But my niece is 8 years old and she got into makeup products and bought a $50 bottle of wrinkle cream
Well,
because you never know what rabbit holes they're going to fall down on the internet.
I mean, I don't know what 8-year-old needs. What wrinkles exist on an 8-year-old's face?
They don't. But there's all these, TikTok trends about Sephora products, and all these girls are getting hooked on that because they don't have anything to watch.
Well, I mean, sure, but I think we are missing the larger point that knitting, honestly, is just a gateway to crocheting, and sewing. And I haven't had a good pillow made in a long time. I'm running out of grandparents myself, so maybe we need to start moving people to those underserved markets. So, but kind of getting back to the idea. Okay, so then what do we do? And by we, I mean the outside looking in, not necessarily established. We don't have contracts. I'm not getting bidding wars over my material, that kind of thing. How do we make the people in the day and age where the Coyote versus Acme story is once again still prevalent, that they are doing their damnedest to make it like it doesn't exist? So if there's a gap in a market of young tween girls where just stuff just doesn't exist, coupled with studios that are like, yeah, we'll make some stuff, but if we're ambivalent or lukewarm about it, we're just gonna bury it. What hope does that give for someone to be like, let me create material to fill that gap?
Well,
You know what I
it's
mean?
frustrating because there's no respect for people who write family movies. They don't win contests, they don't get eights, they don't, get buzz. It's like you write these family movies, people who are experienced and actually know children, like parents and teachers, they write these, and then people just are like, this is no good. Like, because they don't, the metric in the industry is all for these like big sweeping Oscar moments or big hard comedies or sci-fi or action movies, but
Right.
that family movie, unless you're like a huge studio, nobody takes it seriously.
Well, and even then, I would counter with one thing, and it's barely a counter because it's seasonal, and that's your Hallmark stuff.
Yeah.
But from the holiday season for me, I've allowed it to exist as early as November 1st, but I would love for it not to exist until after Thanksgiving, but I digress. But let's just say, being generous, you give November through January to the holiday season for the Hallmark films. Those are ostensibly family-ish, family adjacent. They're romantic comedies in the way that we aren't getting a lot of the way that we used to. But yeah, outside of that period of time, there's no I mean the TV channel changed so many times. It was Freeform, Fox Family, ABC Family, whatever it was called. But there were multiple channels like that for a very long time where a lot of programming existed. Is it just because people don't want to pay money that they're not going to get returns back hand over fist, that they're just like, screw it? Or is there something? I'm looking at the nefarious angle. I am also stupid, so it could be completely obvious as to why I'm not seeing what's going on here. But am I missing something?
I think too, it's like the people who get in the position where they can make this stuff, they might not know children that well.
Mm-hmm.
And then the children watch it, they don't really like it that much. They smell a fake. They're like, these aren't real kids. I can tell they're imposters. So, they don't watch it. And then they're like, oh, see, kids don't want anything because they're not watching what they made.
That's fair. I do agree with the notion that there John Mulaney in one of his comedy specials way back when hit it, nail on the head. And there is no judgment like the judgment of like a 13 or 14-year-old kid. They smell a fake from just walking down the street, just being insulted casually by a group of preteens or whatever. It's soul crushing. So yeah, them being discerning people smelling a fake from a mile away being pandered to, that doesn't surprise me at all. But I wonder then, long term, because you said those types of projects don't win awards. They certainly don't place in the Nickel Fellowship unless you're a middle-aged white dude. Boom, topical reference. Um, so like so like give me the hopeful angle. What do we do? Do you just keep plugging away, or do you try to, I don't want to say chase the trend, because we are told as new unestablished writers never to do that, except for when everyone does that. So how do we take the family oriented, younger audience oriented material and put it into a palatable thing that someone would want to put money behind?
I think there needs to be some sort of metric or recognition for that genre where they're competing against themselves instead of, just everybody else. Because a lot of these lists and contests and things that give traction to these new projects and new voices, they just weed them out because they're not like anything else. Maybe there needs to be more visibility for people who write family. So
Mm-hmm.
it's easier to find. Because when I started querying this recent project I wrote, I had so much interest from like mid to small producers
Right.
that were like, "Oh, yeah, I never see this stuff." But, they make things for streamers and they just want it so badly, but nobody's writing it.
Do the thing that I have heard of late, and I'm gonna categorize this from, say, mid 2023 to current. So obviously we were in the thick of the strikes and everything most of
Yeah.
that time, but basically within the last 6 to 8 months, I have heard that the swing in the industry is going to be not necessarily self-produced. It's weird because I sometimes straddle the traditional publishing industry and also like film and TV stuff. And I hear the same arguments, but for different reasons. Like, if you're writing a book, it's super hard to get a book deal because unless you already have an established audience, no one's going to care about brand new unknown guy. But that used to be the whole point of why publishers existed. I am unknown guy. I need you to make me known. The flip side is kind of almost the case in film and TV now. It's like the names are going away from the studios because they're not getting anything made. So then they're the ones doing indie or self-published. It's not the right phrasing, but I think you understand.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
there doesn't seem to be a place, just generally speaking, for a brand new unknown person either direction. So then does that leave us with kind of going back to, college roots of getting a camera, a couple of your buddies, and just going out and shooting something and kind of doing it for love of the game? You know what I mean? Is that kind of where we're going back to? Or is there a viable angle for people to kind of make things on their own, bypassing the traditional studio system?
Well, I think like what's happening with a lot of women is, we're getting frustrated with the barriers and we're forming our own little underground networks. And, we're passing each other along and trying to like help people along and maybe not do the indie route, but do the connections quietly underground.
Shout out to
And
Megan Reese and the women in non-binary group. She told me that they've just gotten their 500th member the other day. So I want to shout those types of things out for sure.
yeah, so I think it's more going to be like people who are maybe multi hyphenates, some are, some aren't, like kind of building from the ground up and maybe making something new, not entirely shoot with your own camera, but,
Mm-hmm.
you know, not big studio either.
Do you feel like you are the multi hyphenate? Do you even want to be? I
I don't
myself,
personally, but
I
I
I,
know people who are.
I don't want to direct my. I don't have a sense for visual. I could if I had to, but I'm a page guy, and I was wondering, is there a struggle to be like, but I'm not the guy. But do we really have a choice? You know, like there is an element of pulling the Thanos here of, ah, hell, I guess I'll just have to do it myself and see how it goes. Um, is there any money in that though? Because nothing's going to be sustainable until someone takes a risk financially. Do we have the time to kind of grind on this type of thing for a few years before someone decides, okay, let's do it that way now?
Well, one thing is women live forever, and we play the long game. We're used to things. We take time off to have kids. We do whatever. And everything's built on relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of people, like, some are multi hyphenates, some aren't, some really enjoy the other parts of the business, some don't. But really, it's about trust. So once you get to know each other and trust each other, you can kind of put things together. I'm hoping that we'll be able to do it that way. Maybe somebody has the connection somewhere, or somebody really wants to film something.
Do you feel like um, Los Angeles kind of as the epicenter for all of this, kind of going forward in the future, continues to be that way? Do you think that people are like, listen, just LA, regardless of the writing industry kind of in specificity, like LA is just an expensive town to live in, period. So instead of like, well, that's where all the movies and TV are, don't you think places like Canada, like Vancouver, Toronto, uh, I know New York and Atlanta are not necessarily back up and running, but they're getting that way. Chicago is trying to establish itself as a bigger player in that space. Do you feel like it really just needs to be like, no, I want to build these things at home instead of taking my talents to Los Angeles to just have it be wasted there?
Definitely. I went to a film festival in my own city, which is Ottawa, back in December, and we met with a bunch of producers and directors and financiers and things. And I could not believe how many studios were actually in my own city.
Oh wow.
I met
Okay,
with,
good.
there was one that made like 20 movies a year, mostly Hallmark and made for TV, but like it was a very large amount of movies that they're making. And then there were some other ones. Like, it's starting to build everywhere because LA is just too expensive.
So 20 is not a tiny number. I know on the surface of things, people have thrown about numbers of produced works and things being percentage wise down year over year. But I think a lot of that is still colored by the pandemic from a few years ago, skewing those numbers down more than they would have been anyway. So I don't think 20. I mean, Christ, two or three, because even if it takes a couple months to put something together, that's 3-4 quarters out of a year. Four is a good number. So if one studio's putting out 20, they're cooking with gas, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I was very surprised when I like went and I checked all these websites. There's others that are making several a year, and I think it's only going to get bigger. Um,
Where do you see? I mean, are you specifically just looking to write in that family space? I saw on your bio and your background is it got animation in there as well. Where do you think your talents are going to be best served? Maybe not necessarily what you would prefer to do, but
yeah.
because if I want to write fantasy, but I know that I'm probably going to be better served doing character work on like a Chicago drama kind of thing, right? Just trade a sword for a gun, it's all the same. So where do you think that your talents would be best served in order to keep you in the game so you can finally then do the stuff that you would prefer to do?
I think it would probably be either family or some form of comedy. Because I don't know, I enjoy writing pilots for, sitcoms and mostly workplace.
Mm-hmm.
I like writing momedy movies, which is like a comedy for moms, the kind of thing that you'd like kick back and watch on Netflix while your kid naps. Um,
Do you see a
I
lot
don't
of
know.
that in your writing groups that people are leaning more towards? I don't want to say lighter fare in a negative way, but just things that aren't dark and heavy. We've had a lot of that in the last, let's say, 25 years. Do you think a lot of people are like, no, let me throw on, I'm going to use Friends as the example, but I don't think anybody is sitting down watching intently every episode of Friends. They want background. They want something that they can enjoy casually that makes them feel good and not necessarily make them feel bad at the same time.
Yeah, I think comedy, like the mark of a successful comedy is the rewatching
Mm-hmm.
because you watch a drama once, you get all your excitement, but a comedy you keep coming back to. And the jokes get funnier when you rewatch them and you catch things that you missed. But I think in terms of writers, everybody kind of has their preferences already.
Right.
And it's not about people changing what they write. It's that the success of the writer depends on what the market wants at the time. So all of these comedy writers that were getting sneezed on for years are suddenly they're like looking for us, like, hey, you got anything? You've
Well,
been here all along, but
to that point, it's like I've seen Schindler's List. Wonderful film. Saw it once. I don't need to see it twice. But The Hangover, not the greatest movie in the history, but I've probably seen that 30 times. Why? For exactly that reason, is because there's something in it that, maybe I didn't catch the first time through because I was laughing too hard, so I got the second joke instead of the first. Like, I'm not trying to crap on Schindler's List. I just think it highlights that example is like, yeah, that dramatic thing in the moment, like Oppenheimer, you know, is it a great movie? Yeah. Am I going to watch Barbie? Probably twice to three times as much as Oppenheimer if given the opportunity. Yeah. Why? Because it's funnier.
and my kids have already done it. We own the DVD of Barbie. And I think with that family market, the rewatch potential is huge, which is why it's probably popular on streamers.
Mm-hmm.
Because kids love repetition. They love watching the same cartoon over and over again.
Do you see kids? Like I said, my oldest is 17, so he's he might be on the higher end of the age range for this type of stuff, but I don't see younger kids just straight up watching TV the way that we used to. Mostly because the internet didn't really exist when I was their age. At least I nothing remotely approaching a streaming thing. You watch a 2-3 minute movie of a guy getting hit in the junk with a football, but that was the best we could do at the time. Do you think like kids are going to want to sit down to watch a 30-40 hour long program on the regular, or do they really want bite-sized chunks of things, and then will that kind of be the way that the market follows in the future? That will be maybe 15-minute shows or something like that. I don't know. It's weird,
Well,
but
it
it's
already
possible.
works that way with preschool shows. So the episodes are only like 11 minutes long to begin with
Oh,
in
for sure.
younger
Okay.
kids. So maybe what's going to happen is the episodes never get longer. You go from like Bluey and you go to whatever comes next and the episodes are the same length, but maybe they could be scripted content for, networks
Mm-hmm.
or streaming instead of going to YouTube for those short little videos.
And Bluey, I was just casually looking at a list of just, popular stuff. Bluey is like top 5 right now of like
It is
most
so
viewed.
popular. My teenager likes Bluey. She'll sit and watch Bluey. Her and her best friend went to Twin Day dressed as Bluey and Bingo in high school because it's hitting with everyone. It's hitting with parents and kids and
See, I think that's killer. Because when my kid was young, I was a backyardigans stan. Like I don't know what it was about the backyardigans, but when they were about to bust into that song number, I was like, let's get it, let's go. And I'm a full grown, allegedly, an adult, so I can see the appeal. Is that just because it says 5, 6, 7 kind of on the box? That's not specifically who is consuming it. And I think that I completely agree with you that there's a large gap of people who are like, no, I watch this stuff too. And it's fun. And I I don't know. I do my best to not be as cynical as I purport to be. But it's getting really hard because it just seems on the ground, talking to you, talking to other writers, other people kind of in the trenches, that things just seem like, no, this is what people are after, this is what they want, and the way that people are in charge right now, running things, they're just doing it wrong. They're just not seeing what we're seeing, and they're ruining it for the rest of us. Is that your vibe? Is that your sentiment, or do you feel a different way?
Yeah, I feel like they are at huge risk of losing a whole generation of viewers because if you don't get that gap between like 8 and 12, then those kids are gone. They're not TV watchers anymore. They will become adults who just watch the internet,
Mm-hmm.
and don't watch anything. They don't become fans. They don't follow actors as they go through different roles. They don't behave the way our generation did. And they're gone and they have no one left. And I think that's what's going to happen.
What do you think it's going to take? And I'm not saying for legal reasons that we are trying to harm anyone directly, but what do you think the mob running Frankenstein out of the village sort of thing is going to take to get like David Zaslav or Bob Iger to just straight up lose their jobs? Like, how do we get these guys out of power so that someone who maybe appreciates the art of what we do starts running things again? Or is that just the nature of the business and those guys are always going to exist?
Uh, I don't know. I think maybe if they get someone who runs the numbers projected into the future more than a year or two, they're
Mm-hmm.
going to get scared because they're not thinking long term. They're thinking short term gains. And, those kids that are like 8, 9, 10 right now, they're going to be the money later and they're not going to see that money.
So, and because if you're saying that if you don't hook him at 8, 9, or 10, and I know the phrasing of this sounds like if you don't get them hooked on the first go, I know that that sounds wrong, but in essence, it's the same. By the time they're, consumers, 18, 19, 20, when they're getting their first jobs and paying taxes and all that stuff, and they're subscribing to the streamers or paying for movie tickets or whatever, yeah, there's not there. You're gonna why is all the money gone? It's like, well, you didn't give them a Sesame Street or a Mister Rogers Neighborhood or a Bluey or a Backyardigans or Rugrats for Christ's sake.
And
You
all
know,
the other businesses do that. Like, look at Happy Meals. Those exist so that they get them hooked so they're eating at McDonald's when they're 20 and they have giant appetites.
20, bro. If I'm feeling blue, if I'm feeling a little bit on the other side of like, you know what would make me feel real good right now? A 6-piece with a fucking Pokemon toy. Like that's just I don't care. I don't mind getting the weird look from the 15-year-old kid in the drive-through is like, you don't know what I need right now. And it's that stupid box with the smile on the face.
And you like look at cruise ships. It's like all old people. They started putting water slides on all of them because they're like, shit, our clients are all going to be gone in 10 years. We need to get the younger people coming. So
Nothing
now
like
they
putting
get
in
big carnivals. You've seen Icon of the Seas, Mr. Beast, and
nothing like putting an octogenarian on a roller coaster on a cruise ship. How many hips do you need to bust before you're like, these people might not be our target audience now? It's funny to me, because Paramount Network is running their little weather theme on their channel right now, and I caught Titanic as one often does. And it was on a commercial break directly followed by a cruise ship thing, and I was like, this boat seems bigger. And I went and looked, and I'm like, those cruise ships are like 4 times the size of the Titanic. And I'm like,
yeah.
there's going to be, I'm surprised it hasn't happened already, but there's going to be a day where one of those boats go down. And in 25, 30 years, the next James Cameron is going to make the Icon of the Seas starring. It's going to happen. I don't want the boat to sink. We don't need that kind of negativity, but it's going to happen. I hope I'm still alive to buy a ticket for it. In in the last 10 minutes here that we have before Zoom kicks us off, because once again, I refuse to pay the subscription. What is your 5-year plan? And do you have one? Have you shortened it? Do you think you need to be a little bit more urgent in what you're chasing? Or are you comfortable playing that long game like we were talking about earlier, knowing that that's the most likely thing to pay off for you in the future, and you're just comfortable writing that out. What does the next X amount of years look like for you?
Well, I am playing the long game because I enjoy writing so much that I'm like, I could just do this forever. But I want to have a manager in the next year or two
Mm-hmm.
because I don't like querying and, trying to get stuff out there and researching. I'd rather just be writing.
For
I
sure.
need someone to help me get stuff out there. And then after that, I'm not sure. Like, because I don't know what the business is going to look like. I
Does that
just don't feel the panic.
well, and that was going to be my question is at what point does the I mean I'm asking at what point like the fear kicks in and you're like, oh boy. But what's your meter at fear versus like confidence for success? Are you 60-40? Are you 50-50? Which way is the pendulum swinging for you right now?
I think I'm about 70-30 positive. I mean, I have backup. One of my scripts, family scripts, is being turned into a graphic novel. And I mean, I'll always have that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then everything else is like, I don't care because even if like my kids and my nieces and some friends read those scripts, I've fulfilled my purpose. I've entertained some kids, I've entertained some people, and I'm not in a huge rush to
That's
be successful in the financial sense. It's like, it doesn't seem all that great anyway. I mean,
you know, I think the ability to like pay your bills and kind of make this be your living is the common factor of when I talk to writers is like I just kind of want to get paid to do this. But beyond that, no one's like, yeah, I want the beach house in Malibu, the Lambo, or anything. It's like, no, I kind of just want this to be the thing that I do, and to make it so I don't have to worry about everything else. But they're not looking for bidding wars, massive contracts, or whatever. They're just looking to be like, I kind of want the career thing that I was originally promised when I first got into movies or TV, and that's kind of it.
I
Um,
don't even have that hope anymore. I'm just like, you know what? I'm hearing about people living in their cars and like getting evicted and groceries and everything. And I'm like, no, I think I'll keep my day job and, just do this and see whatever happens.
do you? Because that's where for me like the fear kind of kicks in is and why I was talking about the LA stuff before is because I knew a couple kids in high school that did that, got in their car one day, drove west, and only stopped at LA because they couldn't drive to Hawaii, kind of thing, where we're just going, and if it works it works, if not we'll figure it out. But even people who have been there, who would by all measurable metrics have been considered successful, they're also kind of the ones living in their cars, whether figuratively or literally.
Or
And I'm kind of,
teaching writing classes, or, they got all the side gigs and just like, well, how well is your stuff selling?
well, and that's kind of the thing is like, is this really going to be like a part time gig? Like that's kind of what I'm feeling like. Yeah, I want to write, I want to produce, I want to make, but I also got to punch in my 40. I got to get that health insurance because Lord knows with SAG and WGA, if you don't make enough projects in a given year, you won't get qualified for it. So it's like, no, I'm gonna stay working at the office gig or the consultant gig or do the teaching thing or whatever. Um, and it's kind of weird. Like I think that's the multi hyphenate that I think a lot of people aren't talking about. It's not I want to executive produce or direct or whatever. It's I'm a college writer at the local annex, or I do late nights tutoring. That's the hyphenate part. But the writing thing is not the primary goal, is because that's not the thing that sustains you.
Yeah, it's like, well, I'm like a substitute teacher and it gives me great ideas for writing family, but it's
Mhm.
also going to be my pension insurance someday.
Do you
And
feel like coming at kind of the visual medium from a sideways angle, like graphic novels, comic books, or even just traditional novels, just so you can own your own IP? Do you think that that's a viable tactic for people, or is that just another way for people to create stuff and be satisfied in doing so if they can't get a TV show or a movie made?
there's no money in that either. Um, like you're not going to earn a living as a children's author or an author in most cases. I think it's more just getting your stuff out there and feeling
Mhm.
satisfied with it. And some people, it's kind of like a distraction. It's like, okay, well, I can't break in this way. I'm going to take the back door through IP. But then they spend several years writing a book so they can adapt it to a movie. And it's like, you could have just written 4 movies with that time.
That's fair. It's definitely an economy of time and effort. Because invariably you do one thing and you focus on it. Someone else did the other thing and then they get success first, but does that mean you made the wrong choice? Like it's such a wild game. And the unique perspectives really are just fascinating to me, also in the same way as they're scary, is because it's like, oh, that whole no one knows what they're doing thing is the most real statement ever. None of these people, none of us know what the hell we're doing. And we're all trying to agree that, like, the way that you did it or the way that somebody else did it should be the way. And they're like, no, I fell off the back of a turnip truck and somebody picked me up and said, hey, kid, you want to be in a picture? Like, it's just so wild to me.
Well, I think that's why you should do what feels right to you, because if you're satisfied with what you're doing, then you're going to produce your best work. So I just write what I love at the pace I want to, and whatever happens, happens.
That, I think, is a wonderful, wonderful sentiment for us to go out on. What is it that or sorry, where is it that people can find you, your work, your material? Where can they pick you up on the socials and follow you? How can people seek you out?
Well, I'm on Twitter as Lisa Lutes, and I have a profile on Coverfly as well as Stage 32, and I think Script Revolution at this point too.
Awesome. All right, cool. Well, we will link to those in the description. Lisa, it's the fastest half an hour of the game. Appreciate you having entertained me and my ramblings. It was fun having you on, and we look forward to talking to you again in the future. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks for having me.
Bolded Slugs, the podcast, would like to thank our partners at filmsnobbery.com for hosting our show. Today's music is Sublime by Ken Ashari from the Free Music Archive, licensed under Creative Commons. Bolded Slugs, the podcast, is a Dapper Duck media production.